Sabbath, everyone. I'm hoping that we don't have issues with screen twitching, but we'll move forward anyway. How many of you watch the news, read the newspapers, keep up with kind of current events? It's a scary thing sometimes. What seems to make the headlines and the pressures and problems that our nation is finds itself. So the message today is our nation under curse, and I want to take a look at from God's perspective how He sees our nation. That's the goal of today, and also to kind of put how these things play into perspective, because it's not always about the what. The things that are happening are more about the why. And I kind of want to get into that a bit. So, at times in its history, North America has been the most blessed nation out there, hasn't it? Most sophisticated country on the planet. Incredibly rich resources. We could isolate ourselves and we would be just fine. We don't have to import anything. We have it all here. And even the poor, even today, the poor among us are rich, are really, really rich by comparison to many in this world. However, we have big problems. School shootings. How many school shootings have we had in the past year? In fact, there was one this week, wasn't there? There was another one. And it's almost to the point where, yeah, we'll say, well, it's not, it's only 5 people. It's a small one. But that's where we get to, right? Where we're kind of numbed by all the stuff that we're seeing. And then everyone has their thoughts on, well, how do we solve this particular problem? And my goal today is, it's in the context of a whole lot of problems. And there's a very important reason why we're facing these issues that we are. And I think most of the people in this group will understand a lot of those. But hopefully this gives some help and some context and some hope to anybody who might be watching. 9/11 is another example. And for me, 9/11 is kind of interesting because, you hear a lot of people will say, well, it's an inside job. Or it really was the terrorists who got in that plane and, unbeknownst to everyone, just flew into really what amounts to the economic and the military centers of the U.S. That was actually a symbolic, huge blow. But to me, whether it was inside or outside is actually irrelevant. It really is. The fact is, it did happen. Something happened. But that, again, I don't even think the U.S. has really recovered from the trauma that brought. So, a cursed nation, because that's not our only problems. We have hurricanes and natural disasters, billions of dollars, countless lives lost with those things. We have wars, and can you think of a family who hasn't been touched by cancer? Growing up, I don't even think I heard the word until I was an early teen. I didn't even know what cancer was. Now, every family is touched by that. It's the leading cause of death in North America. There's disease and suffering and violent crime everywhere we look. So we talked a little bit about, watching the news. So when you look at the state of our nation, it doesn't seem to be getting better. And I wonder where our heading, or where we are heading. Should be an ing there. I wonder where our head is. You almost wonder, smarten up, people. How can we be this silly and stupid? And is there any soundness? Where do you go for soundness? Well, when I was a boy, politicians, I don't think were all that bad, but you could certainly go to a minister and get sound advice. There's a lot of people you could go to. In fact, there was a lot of people I did go to, because you would get a sound, real response. Now, I don't know, and I don't know how you guys feel, but do you struggle to understand why? Why is this happening? And where's God in all this? To me, the world really is a dangerous place. It's almost like a jungle. And we're insulated a lot from that where we live, thankfully. But it's a dangerous place. And there always seems to be trouble somewhere, isn't there? Not here, typically, but that is changing. So I guess it's more of an interesting question to the older generation. Are we not a Christian nation? Because it's not so much that way today. But me growing up, I mean, we all had prayer time in school every day. This was led by the schools. So it's a whole different perspective. So I would say, are we not a Christian nation? Because that's how I grew up. We were. We're not so much now. But why is God allowing this? And where's God's protection? Can he protect us through this? Where's God? Like, you always hear that, right? There was a shooting. Well, where's God? Why wasn't God involved in this? So let's take a look at God's response to some of these things, because he talks a lot about it. And again, we talked about it's not always the what. Sometimes when we look at the what, we're looking for solutions to this thing here or that problem there. But it's really about the why. That really gets to the heart of the matter. So let's ask God where he is and why he's letting our nation go the way it is. Is that fair? And it's interesting. Jesus had a response in Matthew 23, verse 37. We'll just read that one verse. Matthew 23 and verse 37. Jesus cries out and he says, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, you who have killed the prophets and stoned those sent to you, how often I have longed to gather your children together as a hen gathers her chicks under her wings. But you were not willing. So even through all the things that, in this case, Israel was doing, God's response is, I'm longing to gather you, to protect you, to teach you, to have you as my children, but you were not willing in this case. So the first thing we have to understand is sometimes we're the problem. It's not God, it's the problem. It's us. So our message to God, from my perspective, what I've seen is leave us alone. That's what I've seen, because a lot of things have changed. Our relationship as a nation has absolutely changed towards God. But it's interesting to me, Jesus said, you were not willing. So we say we're a nation under God, or at least we used to, but we've kicked him out of our society, and he has obliged us. You know, prayer has been outlawed. And as I mentioned before, it was a daily public thing when I was growing up. I really shake my head over how things are different over these past 30, 40 years. The Ten Commandments, they were kind of a symbol in the court system. They're gone from the schools. And even worse, standing up for God's law and instruction is becoming a violation of our laws, of our land. It is. It's kind of scary. So the early settlers, when North America was colonized, they believed they were given the land by providence, didn't they? This God gave us this land. This is freedom. We are here to worship God with complete freedom. And often they came over to flee religious persecution. That's part of the reason why we're colonized. And they obeyed God. Even if they kept Sunday, they believed that that was the right day to keep, but they followed through with what they believed was right. Providence, by the way, means the protective care of God as a spiritual power. I thought that was kind of cool, how that what that word actually means. A gift from the hand of God. So how far have we come since then? And my question is, do you suppose there might be a relationship between our behavior and what we've been doing these past many years and the conditions we find ourselves in now? That's really my big question. So let's look at our Father's perspective. So let's consider this. Now, I'd like to go through a bit of reading here. And it's from Isaiah 5. I don't know if you've ever gone through Isaiah 5 in the first 25 verses. But I'd like for you to just kind of drink it in as a story. Often we'll throw scriptures out as, well, this proves this and that proves that, and that's great. But everything we've gone through so far and the place we find ourselves in, I'd really like to just kind of see it as a story. Because our Father is telling us a story here, and it's actually very interesting, especially through the lens of what we're going through. So it's Isaiah 5, 1 through 25. So hopefully everyone can find that. Well, this restart that. Okay, sorry, just technical difficulties. Give me 1 second. Okay. I will sing for the one I love, a song about his vineyard. My loved one had a vineyard on a fertile hillside. There's no reason why this vineyard should not flourish, is the point. But he dug it up and he cleared it of stones and planted it with the choicest vines. There's a big investment here. I'm going to put the best vines because I know they'll flourish and I will have the best grapes and the best wine anywhere. He even built a watchtower in it and cut out a wine press as well. Then he looked for a crop of good grapes, but it yielded only bad fruit. Now, you dwellers in Jerusalem and men of Judah, judge between me and my vineyard. So God turns around and says, okay, judge, I'm going to ask you, what more could I have done for my vineyard than I have done for it? What else could I have done? And when I looked for good grapes, why did it yield only bad? Now I tell you what I'm going to do to my vineyard. I will take away its hedge. And I have to stop there for a second because it's always, ever since I've read this the first time, it's been very poignant for me because that to me really sums up our nation, the troubles in that one scripture. Because God says, I will take away the hedge. Now, a hedge is great for protection. Animals have a hard time getting through. And taking away the hedge is kind of, it's a deliberate thing. Your protection is going to be gone. And why am I protecting something that's bad anyway? Nobody would do that. So why am I doing that? It really sums up the nation for me. And to continue, it will be destroyed. I will break down its wall and it will be trampled. I will make it a wasteland, neither pruned nor cultivated. Briars and thorns will grow there, and I will command the clouds not even to rain on it. The vineyard of the Lord Almighty is the house of Israel, and the men of Judah are the garden of his delight. And he looked for justice, expected to find justice, set everything up so there should be justice, but there was no justice. Instead, he saw bloodshed, and for righteousness, he heard the cries of distress, woes and judgments. And verse 8 says, woe to you who add house to house and join field to field, till no space is left, and you live alone in the land. The Lord Almighty has declared in my hearing, surely the great houses will become desolate, and fine mansions left without occupants. A 10-acre vineyard will produce only a bath of wine, and an omer seed will only an ephah of grain. Woe to you who rise early in the morning and run after their drinks, and who stay up late until they are inflamed with wine. They have harps and lyres and at the banquets and tambourines and flutes and wine. But, and here's the important part, they have no regard for the deeds of the Lord and no respect for the work of his hands. Who does this sound like? Does this sound like anybody you know? Verse 13, continuing on, says, therefore my people will go into exile for the lack of understanding. Their men of rank will die of hunger, and their masses will be parched with thirst. Therefore the grave enlarges its appetite and opens its mouth without limit. Into it will descend their nobles and masses with all their brawlers and revelers. So man will be brought low and mankind humbled, and the eyes of the arrogant humbled. But the Lord Almighty will be exalted by his justice, and the holy God will show himself holy by his righteousness. I entitled this slide, Have Humility. Have humility. And as we continue, I entitled this one, Be Real. That's what this slide means. Be real. Don't be something you're not, and stand up for what you know to be right. Be real. Verse 17, the sheep will graze as in their own pastures, and lambs will feed among the ruins of the rich. Woe to those who draw sin along with cords of deceit, and wickedness as with cart ropes. Verse 19, to those who say, let God hurry, and let him hasten his work so we may see it. So the ones who understand these things, well, let it happen because I want to see the show. Let it approach. Let God judge all this. That's not the right perspective either, as we see. He says, let it approach, let the plan of the Holy One of Israel come so we may know it. Woe to those who call evil good and good evil, who put darkness for light and light for darkness, who put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. And verse 21 says, woe to those who are wise in their own eyes and clever in their own sight. Don't think too highly of yourselves. Woe to those who are heroes at drinking wine and champion at mixing drinks, who acquit the guilty for a bribe but deny justice to the innocent. Therefore, as tongues of fire lick up straw, that goes up pretty quick, and as dry grass sinks down in the flames, so the roots will decay and the flowers blow away like dust, just gone. For they have rejected the law of the Lord Almighty and spurned the word of the Holy One of Israel. Therefore the Lord's anger will burn against his people, and his hand is raised and strikes them down. The mountains shake, and the dead bodies are like refuse in the street. Yet for all this his anger is not turned away, and his hand is still upraised. So our personal blessing after reading that. Do you suppose God who gave us this wonderful land has expectations? As we read about the guy or the owner who created the environment for a good crop, for good grapes. He had expectations. Well, clearly does. He also gave you and I an opportunity and a blessing. And that's kind of want to focus on a bit more towards this half of the message, because there's not much we can do at a national level. It all starts at the personal level. It really does. So, what are some of the wonderful things that we've been given by God in the context of this garden, this vineyard? Well, we have a calling. We have a calling. What is that worth? To be able to look around and not really be afraid like everyone else is because they don't understand why. We understand why all these things are happening, and we know it's going to get better. We have his Holy Spirit. What is that worth? What is that worth? That he gave you, each and every one of us, a bit of himself to make us better. Well, we have his truth and his word, and we all see things slightly different in his word, and you know what? That's okay. That's okay. Forgiveness he's given us. That's a wonderful thing. That's something that the world really doesn't know, really doesn't understand, but we do. Forgiveness. And he has given us a seat in the world to come. That, to me, is awesome. So, creating the environment for you, what expectations would he have if he has set you up with the hedge around you and set you up with the choices of grapes? And I thought it was an interesting thing to work through, especially through the Passover time coming up, where we're really examining ourselves. And for me, I think about this stuff. I really do. How do I have to get better? And it's me, and it's me in the context of the church, and it's me in the context of my work and my family. It's everything. It's not just about at a personal level for myself. And the expectations that God has is something else that we need to be concerned about. So I'd like to read Deuteronomy 28. We won't read all of it, but it's certainly something that we certainly fits in here quite nicely. So Deuteronomy 28 lays it out of what God's expectations are pretty clearly. And if we don't follow God and his laws and his ways, we don't internalize them, and if we're not real about it, because you can pretend to be obeying, but not really. Israel, Jesus came up against that during his time on the earth often. People had a sense of godliness, but it wasn't real. So Deuteronomy 28 says quite clearly, actually, if you fully obey the Lord your God and carefully follow all of his commands, and the ones that I'm giving you today, the Lord your God will set you high above the nations of the earth. And all these blessings will come on you and accompany you if you obey the Lord your God. You will be blessed in the city, blessed in the country. It doesn't matter where you are, what you're doing, you're going to be blessed. The fruit of your womb will be blessed, the crops, your livestock, and the lambs of your flocks. But not just there, the baskets, your kneading troughs, it'll all be blessed. You will be blessed when you come in and blessed when you go out. Our nation then, right, when we first, when we regarded God, that described our nation, really did. The Lord will grant that the enemies who rise up against you will be defeated before you, and they will come at you from one direction, but flee in seven. So they're going to come, it's going to be in such a situation where they'll come at you in one direction, organized and all ready to go, and they'll be going off in many directions, clearly disorganized. The Lord will send a blessing on your barns and everything you put your hands to, and the Lord your God will bless you in the land he has given you. The Lord will establish you as his holy people, as he has promised you an oath. That's a pretty solid oath. God says it. If you keep the commands of your Lord and walk in obeisance to him, then all the peoples of the earth will see that you are called by the name of the Lord, and they will fear you. And the Lord will grant you abundant prosperity in the fruit of your womb, livestock, crops, and the land he swore to give your ancestors. And it won't just stop there. The Lord will open the heavens, the storehouse of his bounty, and you'll have rain when you need it. Rain is not always a good thing. You have too much of it, and that's a problem. Rain in its season is important. And to bless all the work of your hands. You will lend to many, but borrow from none. And the Lord will make you the head. You're going to be in charge. You're going to call the shots, not the tail. If you pay attention to the commands of the Lord your God, or the Lord your God that I give you this day, and to carefully follow them. We need to be diligent about our lives. You will always be at the top and never on the bottom. Don't turn aside from any of the commandments I give you today, to the right, to the left, and don't follow other gods and don't serve them. Keep your eyes fixed on your calling. So curses for disobedience, the other side of the coin. And here's where we kind of find ourselves today. However, if you do not obey the Lord your God and do not carefully follow his commands and decrees I am giving you this day, all these curses will come upon you and overtake you. You will be cursed in the city and cursed in the country. Your basket, your kneading trough will also be cursed. The fruit of your womb will be cursed. The crops of your land, the calves of your herds, and the lambs of your flocks. You will be cursed when you come in and cursed when you go out. Doesn't matter where you go. It will follow you. The Lord will send on you curses, confusion, and rebuke in everything you put your hand to. And if you're reading the news of what people are saying, what people are doing, that to me says a lot. We seem to be cursed, confused, and rebuked everywhere. Until you are destroyed and come to sudden ruin because of the evil you have done in forsaking him. The Lord will plague you with diseases until he has destroyed you from the land you are entering to possess. The Lord will strike you with wasting disease, fever, inflammation, scorching heat and drought, nothing will cooperate. Nothing. With blight and mildew and plague until you are perished. The sky over you will be as bronze, and ground beneath you as iron. The Lord will turn the rain of your country into dust and powder, and it will come down from the skies until you are destroyed. That sounds an awful lot like our nation now. Verse 58 says, if you do not carefully follow all the words of this law which are written in this book, and do not reverse or revere the glorious and awesome name, the Lord your God, He will send you fearful plagues on you and your descendants, harsh and prolonged disasters, severe and lingering illnesses. He will bring on you all the diseases of Egypt that you dreaded, and will cling to you. And the Lord will bring you every kind of sickness and disaster not recorded in this book until you are destroyed. Wow. And then we'll skip down to verse 64 because it's kind of heavy. I think we all get the picture. Then the Lord will scatter you among the nations from one end of the earth to the other. There you will worship other gods, gods of wood and god of stone, which you didn't, or your ancestors did not even know. And among those nations you will find no repose, no resting place for the sole of your feet. And there the Lord will give you an anxious mind and eyes weary with longing for a despairing heart. You will live in constant suspense, anxiety, filled with dread, both night and day, never sure of your life. In the morning you will say, oh, I wish this day was over. I wish it was evening. And in the evening you'll say, I wish it was morning. And that's because of all the terror that your hearts and your eyes will see. And the Lord will send you back to the ships to Egypt on a journey that I said you should never make again. Therefore you will offer yourselves for sale to your enemies as male and female slaves, but no one will buy you. So, that's pretty tough. But really, it comes down to choice. Because Deuteronomy 30, verse 19, and I'll read out of the New Living Translation. I kind of like the way that it phrased it. Because it says, today, I have given you the choice between life and death. It's a choice between life and death, between blessings and cursings. And now, I call on heaven and earth to witness the choice you make. Oh, that you would choose life, and that your descendants might live. So what's God's response? What's His wish? He has set everything for us. And He's told us even before what will happen if we go to the right or go to the left. So as a nation, what are we choosing? Doesn't seem to be the right choice. But more importantly, and what we can talk about today, is as a Christian, in your own life, what are you choosing? Day in, day out. What are you choosing? Are you choosing life, or are you choosing death? You know, I personally see what's going on with our nation a little bit differently. Not so much specifically of what we're doing wrong. That's what we hear in the news all the time. Oh, well, you know, this happened, this war is happening over here, and, you know, this school had some problems, and there was a violent crime over there. But those, to me, they're terrible. They're awful tragedies, but they're just symptoms. And the cause is that we have chosen to disregard God. We've kicked Him out. We don't want His laws. We don't want His word. We don't want His teaching. We don't want His example. And we don't want His Savior, His Son. We don't want Him. We'll take Him maybe if we get a day off over, you know, we could have hot cross buns. We'll take Him that day. Oh, there's one more day, too. It's in the middle of winter. We'll, you know, when gifts come, and we'll, yeah, then it's okay. Awesome. All the rest of the days, nah. You know, the same thing happened to Israel, didn't it? Judah, Nineveh, same thing. God called witness against Nineveh. Jonah went in there. We'll talk a little bit about that. And Sodom, Gomorrah, I mean, nations, gee. And it's Gentile nations too, right? It's not just Israel. Well, why is that? Well, have you ever heard the saying, history repeats itself? Well, man keeps making the same dumb mistakes and God doesn't change. So, God's judgment. What are the lessons from here? Because this is really, it's not to be depressing, but it's important to learn these lessons. Jonah, I love that story. God sent Jonah. And what was Jonah's message? Because he didn't believe Nineveh was going to repent, did he? He walked in and said, 40 days, Nineveh's going to be overthrown, and I'm just going to keep on walking. Have a nice day. Just so you know, FYI, little emoji. But what happened? Very simple message. What happened? Nineveh repented. They did. And God spared that nation. Jonah was surprised. He was even kind of ticked off about it, if you read the story. But God spared that nation. That's actually a pretty powerful lesson there. And Jesus said, one of the shortest verses in the Bible, remember Lot's wife. And if you ever had to tag one sentence that would really help you through difficult times in your whole life, I think that might be one of them. You guys know the context for Lot's wife, right? Sodom and Gomorrah was going to be destroyed. It's going to be gone. God said there, and so Lot and his family was taken out of Sodom and Gomorrah, and they were spared. That one family was spared. But as the destruction was happening, Lot's wife turned back and looked at the city, and she was also turned to a pillar of salt. So Jesus used that example. Remember Lot's wife. If God's taking you out, don't look back. Don't look back. Go. But that's also true for our everyday life, right? As we're coming up against things that might be a little bit tricky and difficult, don't look back. Don't do it. Just keep moving forward. We know the goal. Keep moving forward. So what's the lesson? Well, choose life. Ezekiel 9:4, also from the New Living Translation, I think is kind of cool. Because it says, and this kind of helps me, I hope it helps you a little bit. Because day in and day out, trying to live God's way, in spite of your humanness, it's tough. But it says, walk through the streets of Jerusalem and put a mark on the foreheads of all who weep and sigh because of the detestable sins being committed in their city. That to me is a very interesting thing too, because we shouldn't just be standing, they're sinners and they're going to get what's coming to them. Well, that may be true, but that's not how we ought to view it. It ought to be, look, that's just not right, and I'm not okay with it. Even if those people don't live God's way, it still bothers me. It shouldn't be that way. And that's kind of the perspective we should be praying for. So choose life. And Revelation 3:10 and 11 says, because you have kept my command to endure with patience, I will also keep you from the hour of testing that is to come upon the whole world, and to test those who dwell upon the earth. And verse 11 says, I'm coming quickly. And it's another, maybe a one-sentence thing that you could put on your, put in your mind to help you through difficult times. I am coming quickly, and it says, hold on fast to what you have. So if you only have a little, or if you have a lot, whatever it is, hold on to it. But what's the point of holding on if nobody could take from you? That's kind of contradictory, right? So clearly, people can influence you into a way where you could give up. I think that's what the point is here. Don't let anyone take your crown. That's it. Don't. It's not for them. It's yours, and you have to value it. You can't you can't sell your bowl of soup, your inheritance for a bowl of soup. You can't be that guy, right? Choose life. And your Father's promise, Psalm 91. This is our last slide, and I really like Psalm 91. Because it's really an encouraging a set of scripture, and especially as you're going through difficult times, and it gives you something to kind of hold on to. Whoever dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress. He's my protector. That's what we have to keep in mind. He is my fortress. When I'm having difficult times, where should I be going? I should be going to God. I should be reading His Word. I should be meditating on His precepts. And I should be saying, look, and by the way, one thing I know for a fact, if you're having tricky times, or if you're not doing things properly, when you go to God, be honest. Tell Him, look, I don't think I can do this. Just be honest. Don't, because He values that relationship, right? He wants you to be real. So, my God, in whom I trust. So He should know your intimate secrets. He should know everything about you. And you should have that relationship with Him, that you can go to Him because you trust Him. Surely He will save you from the fowler's snare and from the deadly pestilence. So as you see these things, in our nation getting worse and worse, it's like, well, God is my refuge. That much I know. I don't really have solutions for a lot of the stuff that's happening, but I know I trust Him, and I know from His Word He will protect me. He will cover you with feathers, His feathers, and under His wings, and you will find refuge. His faithfulness will be your shield and your rampart. You will not fear the terror of night, nor the arrow that flies by day, nor the pestilence that stalks in the darkness, nor the plague that destroys at midday. You'll not be touched by these things at all. And it's kind of interesting because the New Testament is full of examples of people dying. Jesus' followers did not fare out well. But in the case of Stephen, what was his response as he was dying? He had this trust. So it could even be that God asks you to give up everything for Him. But I'm hoping that you'll have that trust that He'll see, you through what you have to go through. 1,000 may fall at your side and 10,000 at your right hand, but that won't come near you. So your Father's promise for this nation, but also for you. And as you see bad things happening, and they really are troubling, there's no question, and times where this world is a very, very dark place. It really is a dark place, I find. There's lovely things in it, of course. But think of it more as an opportunity to shine, because this world is very sick, and the leadership is going to change. I don't know if you caught that memo. It will. And it's going to be completely different then. But for now, look at it as an opportunity to stand out, and that you're put on a hill, and your job is to shine. That's your task, is to shine. Now remember, you and I are different and have been set apart, and we have a calling. And that calling is about the way of life, and it's about God's way. So, choose life and live it with your might.